MinFi and AWS present AIM 2023 in association with CNBC TV 18.
Thank you everyone. Thank you ladies and gentlemen for being a great audience. You've heard some wonderful insights, and thank you to all our panelists for joining us. But before I'm going to start this discussion, let me just set up a little bit of context. As you all know, the growth of artificial intelligence in recent years has been truly remarkable. The global AI market is poised to reach an astounding $190 billion by the year 2025. And that itself is a significant annual growth of 20%. AI, as you all know, has the potential to transform business models and business practices across sectors. So clearly, healthcare is no different. In fact, the AI revolution has bridged the crucial gap in healthcare by bringing together prescriptive and preventive medicine and leveraging data-driven frameworks. But when you zoom in the lens on the Indian healthcare sector, that is a success story of our times. The Indian healthcare sector is one of the country's largest sectors and has been witnessing a robust growth led by government and corporates. But however, when it comes to a country like ours, of more than 1 billion, with most of the population in the hinterlands of the country, accessibility and quality of healthcare is still a concern. The solution is integrated healthcare powered by AI. And SMEs, or small and medium enterprises, which are the engines of the Indian economy, can play a very critical role here. So how can this be done? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And what does the landscape look like? That is going to be the topic of this discussion, how to build AI-driven solutions for a healthy India. So let me begin with you, Shalini. Companies organizations have been working towards scaling up infrastructure and providing AI-driven solutions. So how are you, as a hyperscaler, contributing to that vision?
As a hyperscaler, AWS, we have been working on, the whole AI, ML, and healthcare space together for years, right? And we have spent a lot of time in building services which cater to AI and as well as, map it to the healthcare segment.
Definitely.
Some of the things which we have done, and specifically in India, I want to cover is that, we were the people behind COVID, which each one of you would have used. And till date, we have like 2.2 billion doses which have been administered. Now, building a scalable platform like COVID, where you have so many people logging in, getting their certificates, it needs a scalable architecture. It needs a scalable architecture because you are dealing with citizens, as well as you are giving them efficiency, scalability, and when they want, actually at what time they want. So as an hyperscaler, of course, we had to work to see that this infrastructure is secure, is available, and is scaled to what, to the billion that we have done.
All right.
Of course, we have also worked with, and I'll bring an example where we are actually touching the patients, which is eSanjeevani, which is an application in which you can do patient to doctor and doctor to doctor consultations, and we have done millions of consultations in that space. Now, as an hyperscaler, it's not just the benefit of cloud that we bring, which is the scale part of it, but also complex services, right? You need large databases, and so DynamoDB was working in the scenarios. And also services where you on AI and AI ML, like SageMaker is a platform in which you bring a model. You have to build a model as a healthcare startup or as a healthcare enterprise, and you can deploy it and have the entire model governance being done there. So we are not just looking at the infrastructure level, we are looking at the model and the governance level, and the life cycle of an AI is that can sit on cloud today. And that gives a complete platform. So all that you have to do is fine-tune the model with your data, and it is ready for you to deploy. So, looking at the entire stack, it's not just the tool sets, it's not just the infrastructure, it's the model and governance platform, it's actually the models, and we also have services which are like, speech to text, text to speech available, which customers can use.
Great. Thank you, Shalini. Very interesting points and insights there. Coming to you, Mr. Saurav, let's talk about the Ayush Bharat Digital Mission that has laid the foundation for the government actually to scale up the infrastructure. And when it comes to private sector, the private sector plays a very crucial role here. So how are you contributing to this mission, and what is your take on this?
If you look at what we do primarily, what we are trying to do is democratize the process of knowledge and content creation, because that is the key to whatever is happening. I'll just give you an example, right? So, if there is a case that is getting treated by a physician in Balia, and that case was complex, and there was actually a resolution to that, that expertise should not just remain in a place like Balia. It should go outside Balia too. And that is essentially what we have tried to do. So if you look at ABDM, right, I think knowledge creation, that is one of the major objectives which is there. And I think that is one area which is, it's a little bit complex, because we are talking about a lot of physicians out here.
Absolutely.
And, we all know that the doctor-patient ratio is 1:2000, which is high. But actually, that is not a problem. If you see, in India, there are only 3,000 gastros, for example. So for every one gastro, we are talking about 500,000 patients. So by definition, 80% of people in India will never have access to a gastro.
Healthcare, yes.
Now, if I talk about a disease like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, pretty much, 2 out of every 3 Indians actually suffer from this disease. And this knowledge gap that is getting created through this thing, right? I think this is something which we are trying to fill with our way. And I think that's a big fillip, on terms of education which is there. It's also the data integration, right, across. That is one of the major intention of ABDM, right? So we work with hospitals, we work with diagnostic companies, we work with pharmaceutical companies, because the entire development of healthcare has to go together. And I think in both these problems, collaboration and AI, both of them, they play a very, very major role. So I would say, we really need to go back to the adage, that knowledge is power, and basically put that forward.
Definitely, knowledge is power. Coming to you, Mr. Vikram, as a born in cloud company, how are you contributing to this mission? And of course, public-private partnerships play a very crucial role. So what is your take here?
Yeah. So before I talk about Minfi and what specifically we are doing, I just want to talk about our vision and what we think about for the country. Of course, the topic is about 1 billion Indians. I think we are looking at next 10 years. I think the focus is about access on health. Median age of our country is only 28 years. Median age of our company in Minfi is even lesser.
All right.
So at the moment, we have got these young Indians, very, very bright, extremely optimistic. Actually, everybody is thinking about how do we create more wealth. As a nation, we want to create economic wealth. But at the same time, I think we really need to look at a much longer horizon.
All right.
I think we will have a lifespan, which I think in the last conversation somebody brought out, I think which will grow, which will be beyond 100 years if possible, right?
Yes.
It should not be just an extension of lifespan. It should be extension of health span. And that's why we will not need any support. I think the countries which have gone before us, some of these developed countries, the lifespan have increased, but the health span is a big problem.
All right.
So I think where Minfi is really contributing is first stage, of course, partnering with NHA and government schemes, which are going to get access to everybody in the country to healthcare. But I think our major focus, working with all the startups, innovators, on sort of peak performance, and one big area for our interest is biohacking.
All right.
In a very positive way.
Okay.
So that would actually really create for next 7 years.
And increase the health span as well.
Health span, and really bring the peak performance for every individual.
All
And
right.
that would make a stronger India.
Definitely, and a healthy and robust India. Great, interesting points over there, Mr. Vikram. Coming to you, Mr. Harsh, private sector is, of course, a major player when we talk about the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. And, of course, online pharmacies, companies can play a huge role. So how are you contributing to this dream of building a healthy India, and our country has complex challenges. So what is your insight?
I think the best part of the complex challenges, COVID showed us that we can solve it, right? I think there's no better example than India of vaccination with technology at scale. I think similarly, healthcare delivery, I think a lot of people are trying to solve for there are typically 3 stages: information, diagnosis, and then healthcare delivery. I think healthcare delivery, if you're able to solve, and we've been able to do that, by simple examples. Something as simple as voice to text, right? A lot of people in tier 2, tier 3 just say, I'm not well. How do you help them? I think those simple tools, I think a lot of times people complicate AI with complex jargons. If there is collaboration across platforms, and I think even during COVID, all the online pharmacies were there on the apps, all the diagnostics players were there on a common platform, and that shows how collaboration can really work. And I think healthcare delivery, if you're able to solve, be it diagnostics, be it medicine, be it doctor consultation, I think that kind of takes care. And for that, integrated platform is the key. And I think people will have to move out saying, this is my competitor. I think competitors will need to collaborate to solve the problem for 1 billion Indians.
All right, but just coming back to what Mr. Vikram said, when we talk about India, India has its unique challenges. It is also a land of opportunities, but according to reports, 32% of the Indian population needs to travel 5 kilometers to even reach an OPD facility. So how do you think that online pharmacies, diagnostics have, of course, they have improved accessibility, affordability, but when it comes to the hinterland or the rural India, there's still a lot more to be done. So could you tell us, how are you leveraging the AI and ML capabilities for increasing your outreach?
So I think multiple examples, right? I think India has 1 million pharmacies, perhaps the largest. You go to any rural center, you will have a small pharmacy shop or a small healthcare center. You might not have the best facilities. We've given them technology there where they can do a video consultation with a doctor sitting in a metro city. Healthcare delivery, we've even been using drones in a couple of areas wherever it is possible. The moment you have the last guy thinking of a healthcare center, be it a small pharmacy chain, be it a small diagnostics chain, I think that's the way to solve the problem in rural India. And I think that's the way we are going about it. Today we service 19,000 pin codes in the country, be it cold chain, be it normal medicines. I think the logistics infrastructure is developed to help us scale that. You will need to collaborate with various partners. You will need to ensure the regional element is taken into care. I don't think so you can solve it by a one-size-fits-all solution. So on our app, we have 21 plus languages.
All right.
So there are various ways to solve it. Regionalization and customization, I think, is the key there.
All right. Coming to you, Mr. Vikram, as a born in India and born in the cloud company, what role do you propose to play in providing these solutions, the integrated healthcare solutions at scale? And how are you contributing to a healthy India?
Yeah, sure. So as I was mentioning, I think we just spoke about a few solutions in the afternoon also, what we have developed. What we are really learning is that we have access to different categories of customers. We are working with the most sort of advanced life sciences companies who are doing drug discovery. We are also working with health tech startups in the area of Ayurveda and traditional medicine. We are working with customers who are actually on online sort of, what they are providing now, and with the government agencies. I think what it really helps us is to get a very wide experience what's happening at the central level, what's happening at the state government agencies level, what's required nationally in India, and what models can develop from India which can go global, and at the same time what's happening internationally, can we bring it to India? I think
the best of the best as well. Yes.
Yes, and therefore sort of being able to sort of bring this access you just spoke about. This is a challenge which may remain for a few years about sort of, let's say, the telemedicine, the access to sort of claims. If you really look at demystify ABDM, I think a very large part of this structure has already been laid out as part of the India Health Stack. I think what it really needs to happen now is that AI needs to be integrated part of this entire plan itself. Digital plan was conceptualized about a few years back.
Yes.
And that's what we are bringing in. All these capabilities which have really happened in the last 1 to 3 years, and what will happen in the next couple of years, I think needs to get infused right at the center of that. And that's where Minfi is really contributing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Coming to you, Shalini, hyperscalers like AWS can, of course, cause and contribute significant acceleration when it comes to, providing these solutions at scale. So could you take us through which are the healthcare initiatives that you're working towards right now with the central and state government?
Okay. So I think there's a lot of focus for us to work both at central as well as state and local governments. One is, of course, we are partnering with Minfi for the National Health Authority and building the health stack, which helps in creating the electronic health records. It is, the United Health Interface, and also, help in doing claim adjudication and also fraud analytics. Now, this building of this stack itself is going to be adopted by all the hospitals, all the medical providers, all the clinicians that we have. Now, that itself becomes an anchor. We are also working at the state government level, where we have worked with in Telangana for Arogyasri, where we have actually taken 20 applications and migrated them onto the cloud. So that gives them a lot of flexibility, and it was literally 47 terabytes of data, which we were able to do it in just 5 months. So that is at a state level. A state is wanting to reach out to all its citizens, and we are helping them do the entire migration to the cloud.
All right. So that itself is very challenging.
That itself is very challenging, and then from AWS perspective, we are focusing on complex services and make them easy for our customers, like a Health Lake, and then Comprehend Medical, Transcribe Medical. Now these are specific AI models created as a SaaS service, where the model is actually helping a doctor transcribe, or a doctor, or Comprehend Medical is about doctor taking notes. The doctor takes notes in, paper or whatever, but it's all text. Now, how do you convert that text and bring it to a system so that it can be, distributed and it becomes a health record for the citizen?
Again, that has to be done at scale. Yes.
So, how do you do the understanding of, and it is all structured, unstructured data. Not everything is structured, right? The data is available in multiple systems, but we have to, have a pattern around it, and then and do that. And similarly, like, a doctor is operating in an ICU. So doctor is speaking. So while the doctor is speaking, can you transcribe that and, make it available as notes for them to refer later? Or if we are doing, we are talking about video consultation. All of us did so much video consultation during COVID.
Yes.
But, while you are doing video consultation, I remember I did it for my father, and it was so difficult for my father to understand what the doctor was saying. Because the doctor is speaking in either fast English, and my father understands Hindi.
Yes.
It's not possible. But what if a transcribe and everything is available, and on the screen, it's real time, whatever is being spoken is also available. So these are AI models at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
They are AI models which are tested, beaten, trained, learned. And then also you can do it for local language. Like, it understands
all the
English.
languages, yes.
It understands English. I mean, which is, what I say, pata nahi wo samajh mein aaya ki nahi, right? So it's a combination of English and Hindi.
Absolutely.
So these kind of things, when an investment is done and made is available in really high scale, because India is all about scale. India is all about huge citizens, huge volumes happening. So these are some of the initiatives which we are doing both at state as well as state government level. And one part I also want to cover is that we also work with startups in which, Eka Care actually releases and brings the electronic health record.
Sure.
Cure.ai is actually doing annotation on radiology images, right? Diagnostic reporting. So these are also AI models, but with startups, you can power them and you can give them those time-tested models and ask them to localize it for Indian citizens. So
Definitely.
It's a whole ecosystem of players which come together.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to bring you in, Mr. Saurav. Clinet is a revolutionary platform. And again, the current adoption rate is such that it can easily act as a force multiplier to enhance patient outcomes. So how are you enabling this vision, and how are you doing this at scale?
Right. So, see, essentially, if you look at the entire structure, right, there is a process of transformation that goes, right, it starts from data, right, even when we are doing the AI bit. So data is transformed into information. Information then becomes what we call knowledge. Knowledge becomes wisdom. This is a very traditional structure which is there, but now there are extensions. So your wisdom should translate into decision making.
Definitely.
And your decision making should have an impact. And depending on the impact, you have to again structure the data. So there's this entire feedback loop. And that is essentially what we are trying to do by leveraging AI. So I'll give you an example of what I mean, right? So in our case, what is data? There are doctors that are treating patients across India, right? Like millions of them. And in fact, in the morning, I was talking with someone. It was very interesting. We were talking about, how doctors in villages can learn from doctors in the city, but the opposite is also very true.
Absolutely.
So for example, the kind of tuberculosis cases that you actually see within the tier 2 and tier 3, you don't see in tier 1. And there's a lot to learn from them, right? Which means first this data, what doctors are treating, patients, that has to be collected. Now, EHR is the best way, but so I spend almost 15 days speaking to doctors in India, and I can tell you with some comfort, 80% of the doctors do not want to maintain EHR. That's the reality. We might differ from the reality, and I'll tell you, when I ask them, their question to me is, why should we maintain an EHR? Frankly, I don't have an answer to them. They are looking at 60 to 70 patients a day, right?
And they don't have the bandwidth
They don't have the bandwidth, and for them, their written prescription is still the easiest. So that's why, the transcription bit, all those things, if it can be used, is important. So that was my first part, right? We get a lot of this data. So the way we started collecting this data is we said, if you have treated a case, why don't you discuss it with a peer? And that's how we started. So today, we are doing more than 40,000 conversations every month on the platform, where doctors are talking to each other about, how they are treating cases. And after that, those parts are actually recorded, and then they are transcribed. That's where we start using technology, right? Then we are gathering information. And from that transcription, you get to that part where you're saying, which is the most relevant pieces, right? That's where you go to knowledge. And then what can we infer from that, right? So it's a very, very tedious process that we have, it's there. But I think in the past 5 to 6 years, we have been able to create a structure where it happens very well. There is also a lot of human intervention that is needed. I actually have a team of 100 researchers who sit throughout the day to scour all that data. So it's still, we are still on that level that we are going. And what we try to do after that is, for example, in Northeast, if you see the incidences of cancer is very, very high. And one of the reasons why that happens is the referrals are often very, very late. By the time the patient comes to Guwahati or he's come to Kolkata or Delhi, it's gone. So we started this program, where all these late incidence cases that were coming, we started aggregating and displaying it to all the doctors in that region.
All right.
And we work with IIM Bangalore. There are, researchers from there. So they have actually come out with the report which showed that, the incidence of mortality actually came down from that. So what I'm trying to say, AI should be a way to reach, and that's what we are doing, but there are like roadblocks.
Of course.
One of the major roadblocks is also how, physicians function in India. So I think after the wisdom, right, I was talking about the decision making. So I'll tell you, it's just 2 months ago, we launched a product called ADA, which is Artificial Intelligence Powered Doctor's Assistant. And the first tool we launched is a tool called DDX, Differential Diagnosis. I don't know, some of you in this room might have watched House on Netflix. The only thing it speaks about differential diagnosis, tells me the differential diagnosis, right? And this is something which every doctor learns once he starts the school, right? And what is it? It's a game of probability. You're given a set of symptoms, you're thinking, these are the 4 or 5 diseases. So we actually launched this tool. And we use the OpenAI infrastructure because it was there. But we also put a lot of our data and trained it. And what this does is you can put the symptoms in natural language, and it actually gives you the 5 possible diagnoses or 6 possible diagnoses. And one of the questions that I was asked was, oh, you know what? Okay, are you taking money from pharma companies in this? Can you substantiate that this is not biased data, right, within this thing? So, a lot of these questions, I think people are still getting comfortable, but I also believe that, on the second stage, they also understand, right, that at the end of the day, human brain cannot process everything.
Absolutely.
And I think physicians are becoming very comfortable in my experience working with them. And I think this clinical decision making is something that we are focusing a lot on. And that's where the power of multiplication is coming, right? If there is one doctor that is doing something correct, that should go to everyone, not only in India, across the globe. That's what we are trying to do at this stage.
All right. What were the challenges you faced, Mr. Harsh, and how did you address them using AI?
So I think, look, AI, a lot of people only think of patient outcomes, but I think for a lot of organizations, it can also help internal processes, right? So today, just to give an example, we have a commitment where we do diagnostics tests on time or it's free, right? So for that to happen, that kind of service commitment, your backend processes, which is where we use a lot of AI, ML, be it our algorithms, be it our diagnostics processing, be it our order processing, be it our support. Our entire support today, is completely based on AI. So a lot of times people think only on the consumer side or the patient side. I think a lot of organizations, either in healthcare or outside healthcare, I think even if they start improving, like classic example, hospitals claims management, which Vivek was talking of, right? It's the most cumbersome paperwork system in the country that can completely, and a lot of hospitals are now doing that. We are working with a few of these large hospitals where we are trying to transform the entire claims management, right? Which there is more than enough data. And I think the biggest challenge is the confidence. I think a lot of misconception about AI. People think that data will be stolen. Someone will make money out of that data. I think it's important to break that myth, show small use cases, practical use cases, and I think that's when the confidence will come for it to really scale up for 1 billion Indians. I think that's the right way to do it, and we've been doing that, taking small examples, right? As I said, diagnostics at home, or be it, doing last mile delivery. We have 112 patient journeys on the app, disease management, right? If you're a diabetic patient versus ortho patient, I think the kind of treatment, the kind of medicines, the kind of recommendations, everything has to be customized. There's no point if there is no customization. Healthcare is the only industry which requires a maximum level of personalization and customization, because the problem for you will be very different from the other. There's no other category, no other industry which requires that level of customization, right? So I think that is where the opportunity is there, and we've kind of been able to solve that. Today, for us to deliver medicines across the country, we are the second largest purchaser after the government of India.
Right.
So to do that at scale, I think a lot of investment has happened in AI, ML technologies at the back end.
All right. Mr. Vikram, Mr. Harsh spoke about data, and of course data access, data standardization. These are urgent needs of the Indian healthcare industry. So regulated AI can help all this. So what are the kind of user scenarios that are actually panning out operationally when you're addressing this?
Yeah, again, I mean, this is something which is happening right now, but if you really look at some of the examples where it will go forward, I think there are multiple sort of scenarios which we can paint. One of them is, I think we have spoken in the past about digital twin, but more in the setup of a manufacturing and supply chain.
Sure.
But now for India, for clinical trials, this is possible that we can actually use, instead of humans, we can actually use some part of digital twins for the clinical trials.
All right.
And that could be part of a very regulatory sort of framework where during the phase 1 of any clinical trial, we need not actually subject humans. So that's one piece. There are multiple such examples which we can talk about. I think some very interesting conversations here since the afternoon and now as well, where we are talking about this multiplicity of apps. So many innovations, so many tech. How does a normal human being actually absorb
Decipher it, yes.
And you really spoke about sort of wisdom should lead to decision making. And eventually, I think it has to become like a driverless car. That if we really have to take intervention and have to still make the decision, the onus is back on us.
Absolutely.
So I think we have to change that paradigm and really make it sort of a driverless intervention, which is happening in the background. Now, if that is the level of expectation we have, then what should be the regulation which should really support it?
All right.
I think it's really fast forward thinking which needs to happen so that you can really trust these algorithms to that level where it can make decisions for you, very important life-saving decisions for you.
Definitely. You spoke about changing the narrative. Ms. Shalini, in the last couple of decades, tech innovation or tech deployment has always really happened in the West. It's rolled out there, and then countries like India, adopt or embrace digital transformation. So do you think that we can turn this around, and with the India stack and especially the National Digital Health Mission, Do you see scope for AWS co-innovating with the government and really turning this whole narrative around?
Absolutely. I think, Ruchira, a very good question in terms of, how do we change the narrative from a West perspective? So actually, the whole work which National Health Authority is doing and the whole ABDM mission, the way it is done, this is for, the size of population which West cannot imagine. Like, the whole claims that you have to process, it's for 600 million. I mean, that's a target population. Where will they get this, the size of the
Scale,
population?
yes.
So that itself is, and by the way, none of the countries in the world have been able to establish a single digital health record and a health ID. They've not been able to achieve it, but we are attempting it, right? And we are doing it with all of us in the room are going to be stakeholders into that. Now, from AWS perspective, yes, we do work with a lot of alliances like, the Vaccine Alliance, the Gavi Alliance. We did work with them to take COVID into multiple countries, and that's what the government's dream is. We are also working on, so there is a very low footprint HMIS system which can, exist. So we are working to take it to 50 countries and, like Africa where the low resource requirements, you can, build an HMIS. We are also releasing services like, we are releasing Omics. Omics is the gene mapping, gene editing software and product, which can be used by anyone across the globe. And then you can actually share, of course, anonymized. That's the most important thing. That these services have to be HIPAA compliant, and they have to be in a FHIR database, and you don't do that. But actually, think about it. The gene map of India. I mean, the amount of citizens that we have, if that is available, what power it can give. So as AWS, we are investing into whether it's startups, whether it's the government, and also the whole digital public goods initiative, right? The digital public goods is like, you make your, whatever you have created as open. Like Coven, you make that whole platform available for any country to come and utilize that. So that's an initiative, and we are working with them. There are other customers also, like in the India stack, there are 15 stack. And out of it, 7 are on AWS. So, that gives us a leeway to take a lot of them along with Government of India to across all the countries. So that's a spread. You do it once, you do it with scale, you prove it in India. Actually, others would
And the world
want
will
to
look
do
at it.
Yeah,
Just
even
to add to
DigiLocker,
that,
I mean,
Ruchira.
which is even I'll just complete. Even DigiLocker, which a lot of us use, that is being asked by so many other countries to
Even
to work on.
DigiYatra, the whole world is looking at
The
it,
whole
yes.
world is looking at it. DigiYatra is on AWS.
Yes.
So there is a lot of discussion about what happened in India at 1/6 or 1/10 the cost, but
And
with
for
all
such
the
a large
functionality,
population.
and then take it on.
Definitely. Thank you. Those are some remarkable achievements.
I think there is
Coming
no
back to
way.
you.
I think
Yes.
there is no way we are copying from the West. I think West is going to copy us. It has happened in payments.
All right.
It will happen in healthcare. I think that's the writing is on the wall. I think if you solve it for India, I think you're solving it for the globe. And the kind of problems here, it's happening, right? You see the innovation which has happened in payments. There is nowhere. The healthcare system even in the US is so broken. People are looking at India. So I think we will have to set the benchmark. There is no copying happening in healthcare for sure any longer.
Definitely. We will lead the way forward. Coming to you, Mr. Saurabh, how can tools like LearnIt be actually incorporated into a standard physician practice? And if you talk about DocTube or tools like that, what is your vision forward for transformative technologies like Gen AI?
So, see, if you look at from the doctor front, right, I think the ladder that I was mentioning to you, until the wisdom part is more, his what we call continuing professional development, which a doctor does every day. I think now we are focusing on the decision making, which is very, very critical. So, I always say that, and again, people get very scared on the ground when you talk about these clinical decision making tools. So I have started using a word called savant. So when I go to doctors, I tell them, sir, AI is a savant.
All right.
What AI is actually doing is making the right person do the right thing at the right time, rather than being right itself. So I'm saying, instead of considering it as a panacea to solve everything, Why can't we put it more like as a supportive tool for everyone? So I think that's one of the areas which we are focusing very heavily, where to use this wisdom so that there is participation in clinical decision making. And that's where I take your point also, because I think there are just too many things going on, and sometimes the consumer is very confused. What should I use, what I don't use? So what we are trying to do is build more of a healthcare ecosystem. So we don't claim to know everything, neither we can. But the question is, I already have pipes to 350,000 doctors in India, right? It's going to be whatever, 500,000. The question is, can we present that together, right? Where competitors come together, right? There is like no sense of competition. So I think that decision making is very crucial in our eyes, right? How do we help the doctor in decision making? And collect the feedback itself, right?
Right.
So I think you were talking about clinical trials. Now, there is a huge debate that is going on in US about the nature of clinical trials itself, being sponsored, taking so much of time. So of course, COVID was something that was done due to a lot of pressure. But if you look at the usual drug pipeline, it doesn't happen that often. So there is a new area that is actually getting developed, which we call RWE, real world evidence. And what that actually means is that all these clinical trials happen with a limited set of people, right? And I think someone was mentioning before that if you're giving intelligence about a certain demographic and extending it to other demographic might not be correct. A lot of these clinical trials happen in the West, and we take them for granted that they are going to happen in India, right? And that's why this thing of real world evidence is coming up, where if you can collect the right amount of data that is happening, you can come up with more off-label uses for a drug. You can look at, whether other drugs can be bought in a much more speedily fashion. So I think these are areas where we are focusing personally to see how that difference can be made. So I'm thinking of this more as an ecosystem rather than a product itself. So that's on the doctor side, right?
All right.
The patient side is still very new. DocTube, which I showcased in the morning, we just launched it this month. I think the main pain point that we are trying to solve about patient even on the first day is how do we select the right doctor? It's a very simple question, but the answer is not that easy, right? So there have been a lot of things about ratings and stuff. So for us, it was, as a patient, you should be comfortable with how the doctor communicates to you. And that brings me to the other point about patient experience. AI should be used in a way where the patient engagement and experience remains high. In a lot of places, we are actually cutting out this patient experience and engagement. And that might not work well. So that has to be,
Addressed,
so
yes.
I think integrating all these parts, this is where we are, kind of humanize the entire AI experience, I think.
Yes.
That's kind of where we are working
Definitely.
towards.
And of course, the perception for AI also has to change, as you pointed out.
See, it will change. See, it's a reality. The question is, how do we present it as a thing, how we can solve problems rather than trying to glorify a concept in itself.
Definitely. Mr. Harsh, what is the Farm Easy future roadmap really look like when it comes to AI?
So I think, look, we are in the OPD healthcare space where right from doctor consultation to diagnostics to pharma delivery. I think the most logical next step, I think India is perhaps the only country where insurance is out of pocket. Globally, I think it's taken care by the employer or the government. And now with Ayushman Bharat. I think tying up all of these together, I think requires a lot of AI, lot of platform integrations, not only internally within the group, I think even with external players. So for us, I think apart from the operational use cases, if I had to think of 5 to 10 years, how can I ensure that depending on which part of the country, depending on what is available in there and depending on his economic capability, healthcare is delivered in a way which is cost efficient without compromising the quality. I think we're very, very focused on solving that problem, and clearly AI is at the heart of it, right? So.
All right. Mr. Vikram, if I were to ask you to, gaze at the future, take a crystal ball, how do you think Minfi as an AI solution company can kind of piece together this whole puzzle?
Yeah, I think we spoke about a little bit here, what Minfi is making as a contribution with working with various stakeholders, creating an actually unique India model. I think we all agreed that India will be the sort of driver of this new solution.
All right.
And that's what we are bringing in with the sort of all the examples we took on digital twin, all the clinical trials, all how we're going to create patient awareness, and then take this model actually globally. So that's the game plan going forward.
All right. Shalini, coming to you, from the AWS point of view, what is the roadmap for you ahead in terms of AI solutions and infrastructure, and how are you planning to add more healthcare partners or more stakeholders as you go forward?
Yeah. So I think what we are, I did mention that, but what we're doing a lot of investments in building Comprehend Medical, the Transcribe Medical, and please believe these are AI services with medical, domain knowledge built into them. So, it is like, if in Transcribe, it's very easy to do speech to text. A lot of people are doing speech to text. But imagine speech to text in oncology or in nephrology, right? That changes the game, because the doctor is using terms, the doctor is using things which are absolutely related to that medical, and you need to be able to interpret that and give a right result.
In real time, yes.
So one is investments into these services, Amazon Health Lake, Amazon Omics, which is for gene mapping and gene editing. So there's a lot of investment into this. And the other is, of course, building up the entire startups where we expose these services to them and encourage them to use and build on the AI and ML stack. Now, as generative AI is coming in, and when we say generative AI, it is going to reduce the productivity for the doctor, for the clinician who's going to work, because generative AI is about unstructured data, right? And imagine that, to a doctor, there is a lot of, it can ask in a conversation that, what could be their analysis, or what are the research reports saying about a particular disease. So it's a huge amount of data. It's huge amount of conversations that you have to build up for that. So we have launched Amazon Bedrock, which is our generative AI platform, and it has Titan models, which are models which have been created for text summarization, for example, so that in a small summarization you can get a text. Now, we are also working with a lot of partners like Stability Diffusions and AI21, who are bringing models in their own, various domains, and we can fine-tune them. We can work, as the local startups can fine-tune them and make them available for healthcare. So these are, a bunch of investments that we are doing. Healthcare is a big area for us. And in fact, I was talking to Vikram about it, that 2 weeks back I was in Seattle, and where I met the entire healthcare team, and they were saying, interestingly, they were saying that they are building the service based a lot on
Our models.
based on what India is, so they are looking at India because, the kind of data and the kind of scale that we provide is immense.
That's a big win for our country, definitely. Just quickly, before we wrap up the conversation, Mr. Saurav, what are your long-term goals in terms of taking your solution at scale and using AI and ML to do so?
Right. So I think one of the things which I would agree with is that I think India would be at a vantage position now with regards to healthcare. So if you see, healthcare hasn't been treated as a global subject as such, and COVID has actually changed it. So I think it will be global public health. Second is, if you see, the number of medical seats in India has now doubled. So there used to be 50,000 MBBS, now there are going to be more than 95,000 MBBS students coming out. And I think at some point of time, we will start exporting medical talent, albeit virtually, for the development of people outside, and I'm very bullish about that. So I think one of the things, so we are already launching the platform in Middle East and Africa in August.
Right.
So one of the areas where AI is going to be very critical now is how do we look healthcare from a global perspective.
Sure.
So once I have the Indian expertise, how does the Indian expertise help people in Africa? How does it help in Middle East? So this is one area which is very, very critical, I think, for us to kind of see. Second is, again, a lot on the decision-making process,
All
how
right.
we can leverage AI to get, that part. Third is the ecosystem, the partnerships is again becoming very, very critical for us, right? To get people together on one ground out here. So I think that would be a critical part. And, to have more and more doctors and more patients, get a taste of this. And again, I am a firm believer of prevention. I think instead of talking about, we all talk about, if there's a healthcare burden, how to do it. I think there's a way to reduce the healthcare burden, and that's what we need to focus on today.
All right. So just to conclude, definitely AI with the power of data-driven frameworks has accelerated the convergence of, as you said, prescriptive and preventive medicines. But just before we wrap up, in one sentence, one key strategy for building an AI roadmap for a healthy and strong nation. Start with you, one sentence.
So I would say that we are trying to do something where any patient in anywhere in the world, through his local doctor, should have access to the collective wisdom of all the doctors in the world.
All right.
That is
Well
what
said,
we are
well
trying to
spoken. Yes. What about you, Ms. Shalini? One quick strategy.
I think each one of us need to have an electronic health record because, that is going to bring interoperability with
And accessibility, yes.
and accessibility to all. So I know doctors are resisting it, and that's what you mentioned, but true interoperability will happen only when we have electronic health records.
Definitely. Well pointed out. Mr. Vikram.
The theme of this conference is AIM, which stands for AI for Integrative Medicine, if you expand it.
Yes.
And we want a global alliance. So GAME is the one word I would give an answer. Global Alliance for AI and Integrative Medicine.
Definitely. Very well decided acronym. What about you? One strategy.
I think collaboration with competitors, that's the only way to kind of win this, and a healthy India will mean a healthy world. So I think it's very, very important to solve for India.
Definitely. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you to all of you for being a great audience. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and thank you all.
MinFi and AWS present AIM 2023 in association with CNBC TV 18.